podcast. I'm your host, Mari Reesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with James I. Bond, author of Brain Glue. Please enjoy James I. Bond. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today I am here with James I. Bond, author of Brain Glue. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Mari. Thanks for having me.
I am super excited to hear more about Brain Glue and all the other things that you have done and do in your life. But before we get to the creativity heart of it, why don't you share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm originally from Montreal, and we moved to Los Angeles, the Southern California, not quite Los Angeles, between Los Angeles and Santa Barbara, about 36 years ago. Actually, the way I remember it is I have a son and three daughters. We have a son and three daughters. I like to say I, but it's we, you know. I didn't give birth, and okay. But and our middle daughter, we gave her the initials L.A., Lauren Aja, okay, AJA, and she loves the name. She's really worked well. And so I always remember when people say, "How long have you been in California?" I think, "How old's Lauren?" Oh, she's 36. Okay, we've been here 36 years. It's actually weird because 2 years ago she asked me, like, "Dad, you gave me the middle name Aja, AJA, and I love it. People think it's really cool and everything else. Where did you get it from?" And I said, "I got it from the Steely Dan album, Aja, and the song. We love that song." And she goes, "Oh, okay." And then she calls me back and says, "I just listened to it. It's horrible. That's what you named me after?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry." You know, she's listened to it a few more times, so she seems to like it now. But it's terrifying being a parent and you name a child and like, that's their, like, I'm James Bond. You know, I mean, people hang up on me. People. I had this guy who was a investment banker named Jesse James. Is that a good name for a banker? Jesse James? Wasn't he a bank robber?
Might have been.
So I called his office and I said, "It's Jesse." And then she said, "Who's calling?" I said, "James Bond." She said, "Yeah, right." Click, and hung up on me. I called back and she said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Bond." She actually said, laughing hysterically, "I'm sorry, Mr. Bond. He was waiting for your call." You know? Oh yeah, okay, thank you. I got it. But yeah, but I am one of. When we moved to California, I eventually launched one of California's leading behavioral management firms, and I ran it for 13 years. We had PhDs in psychology and organizational development on one side, and senior execs from major consulting firms on the other side, you know, Ernst & Young, McKinsey, we have those big companies. And it was really fascinating. I have a mechanical engineering background, and so I'm very technical. Mm-hmm. But I always loved psychology. It's one of those things where they pushed me and said, "Oh, you know, you're good at math, go to mechanical, you know, you have to go to mechanical engineering," without realizing, but I love psychology. I mean, it's like, it's fascinating. It's how people interact and all that stuff. And so, but I read, initially I ran an advertising agency in Montreal, and I was exposed to, you know, I worked my way up, and we eventually had major clients, some of the biggest companies in the world: Kraft Foods, Timex, Avon, Seagram's, Seagram's booze and stuff like that. And then we had an opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign in America because of the connections we had. And they said, you're really great. You have to do this. So we came up with a logical reason why people shouldn't do drugs, and they loved it. And then we saw what we lost to. We lost to the ad with the guy holding an egg and saying, "This is your brain," cracking the shell, popping it into a sizzling frying pan, so you could hear the sizzling frying pan. And they said, "This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?" And when I saw the ad, two things happened. First is I knew it was a gazillion times better than mine, our ad, okay? And the second one was because it was, which is the second reason, because it was emotional selling. And
Mhm.
I didn't, I recognized suddenly I don't understand emotional selling. I mean, this was powerful. It touched me. It was affected me, I mean, and I knew it affected other people. It had tremendous results,
Yeah.
but it was profound, but I didn't understand how do you create that? And I was terrified. I remember I had sleepless nights thinking, how did I get into advertising and marketing and business and even life without understanding emotional selling? And I realized they don't teach it in school, or at least they never have. I've never seen it. And
Mhm.
I went to the library, but they have superficial things, but they don't really teach it. So what I
Mhm.
did was I took a box and I gave it a name, and I called my box the Passion Box. And then every time I would, I took Your Brain on Drugs, I wrote it on a 3x5 card, Your Brain on Drugs, so I'd remember it, and I put it in the box. And every
Mhm.
time I saw something that was like really exciting that used emotional selling, I would, you know, tear it out of a magazine or whatever. I'd write it down. I put it in the box, so I save it up. And I forced myself not to analyze or overanalyze because I don't understand it. So why should I analyze it yet? Let me accumulate it so at least I can emotionally be affected by them.
Mm.
Not logically, emotionally. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember my wife hated me going to, we'd go to a doctor's office and she would be like, I'd looking through a magazine. Oh, wow. She'd go, do not tear out of the magazine. I go, no, no. She says, okay, she would sit as far away from me as possible. I do not know that guy, as I tear out of the magazine. But I would put, and eventually I started putting things in that weren't just ads. Initially, it was just ads I would put in. But I
Mhm.
started, I grew up with President John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., stuff like that. And sometimes they would say things that were really profound. Like President Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I
Mhm.
went, this is, it feels like there's a pattern in there. It's really affects people. Let me write it down and I'll put it in the box. I learned eventually it's called chiasmus. And I'll explain what chiasmus is in a second, but in a few minutes. But I went, whoa, Malcolm X, a civil rights activist, Malcolm X, used chiasmus. He said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock, the rock landed on us.
Mm.
And when you say it that way, suddenly it resonates in a way with the brain, with the heart. We didn't land
Mhm.
on Plymouth Rock, the rock landed on us. And because it resonates, it was really profound. He also used the line, when you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything.
Mhm.
And it's so profound. I mean, even today, everybody, people say it, they don't even remember it was from Malcolm X, but it was just profound because of chiasmus, because of this pattern. And
Mm.
so eventually we moved to California, Southern California, and I met John Gray. And John Gray was telling me he wrote a book called Men, Women, and Relationships. Fabulous. It was profound. It was one of the best relationship books ever. Okay.
Mhm.
And he sold a few thousand copies, and he was frustrated because he thought it was so great that a gazillion people should be reading it, and they weren't. And so he
Mhm.
was telling me how he was doing a seminar to try to promote the book, and he said something, and all the women in the audience started laughing hysterically, and all the men turned to the women and went like, "What's so funny that he just said?" you know? And then so he said, as you can see, some things women find really funny and men don't. Some things men find funny and women don't. And so one of the women in the audience said, it's almost like men are from a different planet. And
Mhm.
so he thought about it and he said, I guess men are from Mars. And everybody laughed hysterically. So when he got
Yeah.
home, he went like, I really haven't, engaged everybody somehow. Men, women, and relationships, the title didn't really work. What would happen if I changed the title to men? He thought first, well, if men are from Mars, where are women from? I guess women are from Venus. Venus is the god of love. Okay.
Mhm.
And then he thought, what would happen if I change the title and also go into the book and just do references to Men Are from Mars and Women Are from Venus? I'll keep it the same book, but I'll refer to Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus
Right.
throughout the book. And you know what happened? Almost overnight, he sold 500,000 copies, then 1 million, then 2 million. I know somebody who helped him in marketing, and and
Yeah.
I wrote in my book, Brain Glue, that he sold 10 million copies. He said, no, you are so wrong. We're already at 50 million copies. 50 million copies. He went from a few thousand to 50 million just because he changed the title. And
Yeah.
it was amazing and
Mhm.
fascinating. And I love the book. And so when I got home, I was going to hit the book in my passion box. And I said, wait a second, let me take out all the stuff in my passion box. And I've been saving it for now 35 years. But back then it was about, 10 years I've been doing it.
Mhm.
And I dumped them all in my bedspread because it was a nice big space. And now here's the scientist in me, or the logical person in me. I said, can I group them into different processes or patterns? So men are from Mars, women are from Venus is an analogy or a metaphor. Okay. What I did was I started to recognize, okay, so that's a metaphor or analogy. So what else is there? Oh, well, the TV show Shark Tank is not a tank full of sharks. I mean, it might feel like it for somebody who's on the show, but it's not a tank full of sharks. It's a metaphor. If it was called the Investors Club or the Investors Group, I don't think it would be as successful as Shark Tank.
Right.
It's just a cool name because it triggers parts of the brain. I mean, I've learned the science of this since then. And there's a lot of science that goes with why this works.
Yeah.
So then I thought, okay, well, I remember having seen a show on the Discovery Channel or History Channel, one of those two, talking about Dreyer's ice cream and how they invented, and they were struggling. They started during the Great Depression, and then they came out with Rocky Road ice cream. And it's not rocks. You don't open it up and, oh, look, there's rocks inside our ice cream. How do you like that? You know, no, broke my tooth. No, it's but it's like rocks because it's chocolate ice cream with nuts and marshmallows in it. It's bumpy, like a Rocky Road. They actually stole the name from somebody else, but that's a whole other story. But Rocky Road became massively successful, and for three reasons. The first one is because it used analogy or metaphor. Okay, it's Rocky Road, so it's kind of a cool name. Second one is Rocky Road. It used alliteration. Rocky Road, a repeating sound. And I started realizing, if the brain's alliteration, is that a big thing? And I started realizing, oh my gosh, Coca-Cola, Lululemon, PayPal, TikTok. You think it's a coincidence that these are massively successful companies? You think it's a coincidence that they use alliteration? No. I mean, think of TikTok, okay? If they called it the Chinese social media platform, you think it would be as successful as TikTok? No.
Definitely not. I mean, there's so much creativity in the last 36 years of your life and the work and this passion box that you have. I'm so curious, what does it mean to you to be creative?
So the electives are so important in college. Okay. I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember, so we have electives, and I took art as one of the electives. So art classes, I thought, and it's psychology. And that's when I got hooked on psychology. Okay. But I took art classes also. I was fascinated by art. And I know it was really cool. Somebody said, oh, you took it because you get nude models. Well, that helped, but not really, you know, but it did. But I guess my brain was more focused on, what am I getting out of this? They want us to understand shape and body and everything else. And yes, they might have a girl who's really beautiful or whatever, but it's her shape. It's the shape of her face and everything else. And I started doing drawing, you know, like freeform drawing. You look at it and don't look at your page and draw, you know, things like that. And it was triggering my right brain, the emotional side of my brain, which was fascinating for me. And I never really had opportunity to explore that before. And between that and psychology, I was like hooked on that and said, forget this mechanical engineering garbage. I mean, I want to make products. This is more fun. And I started realizing that it's the creativity aspect of it was really fascinating. In fact, so initially we had beautiful images that we would do for advertising. And so we were able to come up with like beautiful images on logic, because I knew logic, I knew math, you know, and I knew logic. And so that's how we had it with the advertising. And I loved advertising because of it. When I was exposed to This Is Your Brain on Drugs, at first I was scared, but eventually I went like, this is art. This is art. Touches the heart. Art touches the mind, the soul. You know, I mean, it affects us in a way that's emotional. And that's really the greatest art. I mean, they'll show, you know, what's his name, who would splash art onto the canvas and everything else.
Jackson Pollock.
Jackson Pollock, you know, and Jackson Pollock was fabulous. And people would go, oh, it's just a bunch of art splashed on the page. No, he was exploring color and how a little bit of color here, a little bit of red with all these other colors works. They have Monet, who does the squares and all that stuff, you know, and he wanted to see how big a square of red do I have to do it to balance out all the colors? And to me, it's emotional. Like, can you? So I took some of the classes I took were film classes, motion picture classes. This was so awesome. So I said, we watched a movie, and I came out of the movie because I'm moving into the art area, okay? And I
Mhm.
said to some friends, so did you like the movie? And he said, well, the acting was good, and I sort of filmmakers, no, forget it. Did you like the movie? Well, the directing was okay. So I said, stop the technical stuff. Just feeling. Did you like the movie? Well, it was, and they were stuck in this whole. I got to tell you, but yeah, I like the cinematography, and then this. Did you like the movie? You know, were you emotionally affected? Can you watch a movie without having to analyze every little piece of it? Can you just affect it? But we do too much and over analysis, and that's why I recognize that. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, with brain glue, it helps you because I say, so I want you to come up, think logically first. Okay, so a lot of people are logical first. So think logically first about how you describe what you're doing. Okay, got it. Now I want you to have fun. Okay, we're gonna come up with crazy analogies, what happens is it goes to like Rocky Road ice cream. Rocky Road ice cream was developed during the Great Depression, and the nickname for the Great Depression was Rocky Road. We're all on a rocky road. So the
Yeah.
concept is we're on a rocky road anyway. We might as well have Rocky Road ice cream. It's kind of funny.
Yeah,
But what happens is
absolutely.
it triggers emotions and it gets people excited. I mean, I was doing a turnaround of a company that sells martial arts equipment, and we're doing a turnaround. So they were afraid they're all going to lose their jobs, and they were terrified. And when people are terrified, creativity shuts down.
Right.
And so I tell jokes, and I'm really bad. I have some terrible jokes. So anyway, so the joke I told with the martial arts equipment company was, so the maintenance man is hiding in the maintenance closet. And whenever people would come up to the closet, he would open up the door and scream, supplies, not surprise, supplies. And
Yeah.
so here's the punishment I get for telling a joke, okay? Now I told a joke because I'm trying to get people warmed up, get that
Yeah.
creativity going, feel good, forget about what's going on out there, and let's all be in here and try to be creative and come up with ways that we can fix the company and save it, maybe come up with new products, whatever else.
Yeah.
And so I remember every time I look inside somebody's window, I look and I see how much stress they had on their face. I'd open the door. I wasn't intending to get this, but I would get this response almost all the time. I'd open the door and say, hey, how's it going? And they go, look at me and they go, supplies. And their whole physiology changed. I mean, they went from being, I'm so, we just got a customer and we don't have enough products. We shipped it later. We made a mistake, or who knows what it
Yeah.
is. I know those are stressful. I got that. But I saw this person that had a t-shirt once that said, life sucks and then you die. And I'm going like, no, this is life right now. This is not practice and then we're gonna have life next. This is life. We have to enjoy life now. I mean, we're blessed with all these awesome things that happen and some bad things that happen. There's no question. But then
Yeah.
they are good stories to tell, But
Sure.
it's part of enriching our life, And
I
I
mean,
think
it
that
sounds like you have had a very full, rich life. I'm curious if your memories of creativity, like what is your earliest memory of being creative?
my earliest memory of being creative, formally it was in art class.
Yeah.
Okay, that was in college. But I know I was creative before that. I would start trying to figure out how to make things and fix things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I just it was in our. I never consciously thought about it before. Okay,
Right.
where does creativity come from? It comes from passion. It's stuff you love. I mean, you
Mhm.
always have creativity. I love movies. My son and my oldest daughter. I have a son and three daughters. My oldest son and my oldest daughter were in a ton of movies and TV shows. And part of why I got into advertising is I love art. I love passion. I want to understand art. I want to understand that it's just, creativity moves people.
Yeah.
If you say something, I'll go back to like the things I was talking about with brain glue. When when Malcolm X said, ask not what you cut. I mean, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock; the rock landed on you. I mean, that's a whole story gets created inside our mind, our
Sure.
heart. You know, and it
Yeah.
affects us really tremendously. And so, to me, I never thought of it until you started asking me this. But brain glue is the triggering of art, of the same thing that
Mhm.
art does, which is emotion.
Mhm.
I mean, the bottom line is our life is so short. If we're not going to be emotionally moved by things, and sometimes, crying in a movie or something like that, or crying because my dog died or something like that. Okay, you've got to have that too, because I think if you don't have the down, you don't enjoy the up.
Right.
You've got to have the range of motion. You can't be just like this. In fact, my wife, when we lived in Canada, we lived in Montreal first. My wife, we knew she worked at a community college, and they had this guy who was the maintenance guy for all the buildings that they have. And his life was organized. He knew everything that was going to happen. If he wanted, he knew we're going to go on a vacation in 2 years. We'll save up money for that, whatever else it was. We're going to retire. A month before he retired, I always remember this. A month before he retired, his wife left him. You know what she said? I realize my life has been boring with you.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, I wish I had some of those things in my life. You know, we had so many, you know, but but you left because your life was boring. And I realized that I cannot say my life has been boring. Can you say your life has been boring?
No, my life has definitely not been boring. It's an adventure. And it sounds like so many stories that spark creativity and spark emotion for you and passion. What if you were to come across someone or meet someone who didn't feel like they were creative? How would you encourage them to find creativity in their life?
No, everybody is creative and they don't realize it. Okay. Because if you like things, if you're passionate about things, if you've ever seen a movie or read a book or seen something that you thought was beautiful, or seen a guy or a girl who was beautiful, I mean, you've got art inside, you've got passion inside you, you've got creativity inside you, and you don't realize it.
Finding your passion, what you love, you can really tap into your creativity and finding that joy and that peace. And it sounds like you have so much of that in your own life. I just have one last question. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
Fabulous. I mean, it feels, it's you know, creativity is an exploration for me. It's a discovery for me of something new. You know, if I hear a song and I've never heard the song before, this type of song, and you know, there's certain songs I'll listen to with my wife and I go, oh, I love, this is one of my favorite songs of all time. And it's not like any other song. You know, I love it because it sort of takes me to a place that I've never been before. And it's part of, you know, it's part of life. Is like, you know, you want life to be interesting. You want life to expose you to things that you've never experienced before. You want to go for a walk to some place you've never been before. We're sitting and watching these birds. You know, my wife looks up, I look down all the time. I'm looking at animals down there. My wife is looking at, well, look, there's an eagle. There's this, you know, there's a hawk. Oh, wow, look, the blackbirds are attacking the hawk. You know, oh, that's interesting. I never noticed that. There's a hawk? Well, I've never seen hawks. Oh, yeah, they're all over the place.
I love it. It sounds like you can find creativity wherever you go, in whatever you do. And that is a gift to share with others. And it sounds like you get so many opportunities to share it. And if people want to learn from you, with you, read your book, how could they go about doing that?
Well, the easiest way is go to braingluebook.com. And you know, hopefully you'll buy it. But even if you don't buy the book, it'll take you to Amazon. Okay. Amazon lets you read parts of it, which is really cool. We also have an audiobook, because a lot of people like audiobooks. We have this fabulous narrator, this guy, Johnny Unitas, and he's like hilarious. And he tells this story. So we have a sample that you can listen to the story of it also. But I think it's one of the things about brain glue is as people start learning brain glue, they go, oh, I knew this. I never realized these things all are connected together. Rhyme, you know, if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. Wow, they use it in court? I can't believe that, you know. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pill. I mean, rhyme. Wow, it's amazing. You know, as they start recognizing these things, they realize this is fun. This is all around us. You know, these things are, you know, these are phrases. I heard people say this all the time. They sound so impressive. I never realized they're actually using a technique. Whoa, I can do that. And it becomes really fun. So braingluebook.com, at least, you know, check out some of the free stuff that you can see on it. I think you'll really like it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. It has been full of creativity and so much fun. So thank you again.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.